And I really want to thank everybody who took time out of your lives. I know how busy people are. I know how intense people's lives are. For those of you who weren't watching, the Dodgers did win and we're up 3-2. But I want to thank Mike Bonin for being here tonight as well. Don't worry, I promise the cameras will catch every recall Garcetti, recall Bonin, every and what I would ask of you, just by the ground rules that are here, is to have the chance for us to hear each other. Nothing more, nothing less. I have 7 minutes at the beginning. The rest of it will just be responding to what I hear from my constituents here in Venice. And I want to thank Mike as well for being here. When I was invited to be a part of this town hall, it was a no-brainer for me. There's no issue I care more about, and I think probably everybody in this room cares more about, the issue of homelessness in Los Angeles. So for 7 minutes, I want to walk you through a couple of things. And please, folks, again, I'll keep saying it, but I think respectfulness is the most important part of our democracy, and that is making sure that we can hear each other. So we're starting with that. Let me begin with a little bit of a presentation. So we can cue the first slide here. I think a lot of people, everybody has a theory about why homelessness exists. Certainly when people come to me, they're like, you know, Mayor, I know why homelessness exists. It's because of folks that are coming out of the foster care system. It's people who are coming out of jail. It's people who are experiencing domestic or sexual violence and have survived that. It's folks that are, dealing with the high price of housing. When you look at all the things that are here, really they fit in my belief, is that it fits into 3 different categories. Please, ma'am, for the respect of everybody else, not even for me, please just let me finish speaking and I will give you the same courtesy when you're speaking. So trauma is something I think that almost everybody on the streets who lives there, in one way or another, has experienced. It can be domestic violence, physical abuse, some sort of emotional trauma, and/or our economic things. The fact that folks have been evicted, the fact that our economy is so strong that we have not built enough housing and rents have gone up for everybody. You don't have to be homeless to feel that. The loss of a job, a divorce, those economic factors also contribute. And the third piece, obviously, is health. We're facing a mental health crisis in this country. I think we can all agree that there's an epidemic of mental health and inadequate care. If this room full of folks went to emergency rooms tonight with broken legs, we would all be seen. If we all went with mental health emergencies or opioid addictions, maybe 1 or 2 of us would get into a program. That's a national disgrace. Third, there's physical health issues as well that a lot of people struggle with on the streets. So we go to the next slide. If we look at this right now, we need to build more housing. I think that's something that even outside of homelessness, we acknowledge in Los Angeles. I was at daddy-daughter sleepover camp in Griffith Park a couple weeks ago with my daughter. And one of the dads who was there grew up in the Valley like me, and he said, my grandfather moved to the Valley and bought his house for $5,000. My dad bought his home for $50,000. I bought mine for $500,000, but I'm telling you, if my daughter only has a choice of a $5 million home, our LA story ends. So there is, I think, a mutual concern we all have to build more housing. And if you look at it right now, we set a goal of 100,000 units of housing to be built at all levels. 6 years ago, in 8 years, we're going to hit that 2 years early. And we have to keep doubling down on that. On supportive housing approved, the goal was to do 10,000, which I think is still inadequate as well. But thanks to a linkage fee, which means when people build market rate housing, they now put money aside to build more affordable housing. The work that we're doing around our subway lines and our light rail, and the amount that we're producing right now, 15,000, we're about more than half the way there, and I think that we can do more. Next slide, please. Homelessness has been increasing. This is probably, I should say increasing, obviously, but the last year, after 9 years of increasing in LA, and these are LA County numbers, not LA City specific, we had for the first time, nothing that I brag about, nothing that we would necessarily feel much out there, but it is important. The first numerical downturn last year, 6% in the city, about 3 or 4% in the county.
Due to a miscount.
So, and I agree, there's all sorts of flaws with how we count things, but please, can you just hear me out for a second? If we can go to the next slide, these numbers are real numbers. That 4 years ago, this is the number of people that were moving from homelessness into homes. It was only 5,800 people. The next year, because of money that we scraped together before we passed something, we never had a plan. We never had coordination with the county and the city, which is the most important thing you can have, because we only control police and public works. We have no mental health care, we have no hospitals, etc. We brought them together, and we started adding, and then voters passed Measure H and HHH in the last little bar. We've seen those numbers come up to where we've almost doubled the number of people that are coming off the streets. So in other words, when we look at those numbers, and I'm as suspect as those numbers as any of you because I know the counts have been flawed, it's not always apples and apples. But my point is, let's say the supply is about 15,000 new people becoming homeless every year. We weren't meeting that. We were going down here at 5, then we were at 8, then we were at 10. Last year, for the city of LA, was actually the number of 16,500. It was the first year we had more people solved than put out on the street, which is why there was a small numerical decrease. But obviously, we need to get that number up even higher. Next slide, please. So, and I'm not saying neighborhood specific, this is, I agree, this is just citywide. So homelessness remains very visible on our streets. What distinguishes us from a lot of other places is that even as our homeless numbers finally, after 9 years, came down a tiny fraction, our unsheltered numbers have gone up. And we have a higher percentage, partially because I think of weather, and partially because we also had criminal justice reforms, which are well-intentioned, but the money that we were supposed to save from not incarcerating people for 20 years wasn't put into programs that actually catch people when they get out of jail or they get out of prison quickly, and that's a big flaw. That should have been 2 or 3 years. That's why we've had also a lot of people who are unsheltered. Next slide, please. So, let me tell you what bridge housing is and what it isn't. I want you to know that a bridge home is not 100% of a housing solution or a homelessness solution. It is one element of a strategy of all the above. We all know, any of us who have worked, and I worked on the issue of homelessness long before I was an elected official. When I was 14 years old, I started working on this issue in this city. I've done a lot of outreach work. I've talked to a lot of folks that are out there. I'm sharing my story with you. I'm sure you have stories too. But my point is that when we do this work, you need to actually get to know who individuals are. You need to know what their stories are. If it's a woman who's experienced sexual violence, and you need to be able to help her out, if you don't know that about her, and she doesn't want a man approaching her on the street, you're not going to be very successful with a male outreach worker. If it's somebody who is, just out there because they're economically and they need a couple months of rent, you need to know those stories as well. So Measure H was this piece. This was about the increase of services. And since voters passed Measure H, I'm pleased to inform you, and Wasta can give us the official numbers, about 1,000 more people who have never been enlisted in this fight on homelessness have now been hired. Who are they? They're outreach workers, they're mental health professionals, they're folks who are specialists in this area, and they're just been hired, so they're in the process of being trained right now, and they will be hitting the streets. That is by law, the counties. This isn't anything to do with me or the city. The county voters passed this. This is part of what the county measure demands, and it's what's happened. I've gone to those trainings, I've seen those folks. We had 25 outreach workers in the city of Los Angeles for our homeless population. It was 25,000 people when I started. I looked at that and I said, we will never solve homelessness. Can you imagine having a caseload of 1,000 people that you're supposed to get off the streets? Absolutely fail, won't work. So that's the first piece, outreach, and then the services that go with that. Somebody who can help somebody find an apartment, somebody who can enlist them in whatever they need to get off of the addiction that they're facing, etc. Supportive housing was the city measure. And a lot of people said, because it leverages 10,000 units of new housing for those who are the worst off, people say, well, there's 25,000 homeless people, how can that solve it? It's never intended to single-handedly. In fact, it's the most expensive housing to build, but it's the most successful one for those who are the most deeply either facing mental health challenges, addiction, etc. And we have an amazing success rate. I've been doing that in my own district for permanent supportive housing when I was a council member, and we were able to do that in a way that was quite successful. But that is the 10,000 units. That takes a lot of time, and it's too expensive, in my opinion, to solve homelessness by itself. Those critical pieces. Yes, exactly. Although we just got folks you'll like to know, $109,000 a door to a permanent supportive housing project that just opened in South LA. So we need to continue to bring that price down using construction technology and other things. Third is the preventive thing, which is the affordable housing. Okay, I'll pause for a second. All right, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, turn on the AC and help her out. We can chance that. We can find a common space on some issues. So affordable housing is the preventative work. And by the way, the longer I work on homelessness, the more I think it's not just building affordable housing, but it's rental assistance for folks that are on the brink of becoming homeless. In New York City, for folks that are, in New York City, for folks that are HIV positive and homeless. They give folks, I think it's now up to about $300 a month. You're saying, why are we giving away $3,600 a year to folks who just are homeless? Well, together with benefits that people get from SSI and a roommate or two, they've been able to cobble together either preventing or taking people quickly off the streets who are homeless. And that's an area we talked to the county about doing more. So affordable housing, that third bucket, isn't just building more housing, it's also helping people not be coming with more rental assistance. We've done that for the first time out of our general fund, where we take city dollars to help people get apartments as well. Not enough, but it's the first time the city's ever done it. So the last piece, what is bridge housing and why are we here today to discuss what a bridge home is? So bridge housing was the idea that while we're waiting for this permanent stuff to happen, and while we have more services here, there are too many people in between who are caught. There are too many neighborhoods that are waiting. The tweezer-based approach, as I call it, is this piece. We actually will get to know folks in a given area through the Homeless Services Authority. We'll find who is closest to death, literally. They will go to the front of the line. We take them out and put them into permanent supportive housing. While that's good for that person, it doesn't help a neighborhood. It doesn't solve homelessness in a neighborhood where there are many people in camps. So just stay with me for a second. Yell at me as much as you want after, but just please listen to the logic behind it, okay? So the permanent supportive housing, okay, or you can let it out now. Okay, so the bridge housing piece is what do we do in a neighborhood to make sure where we go, so there's maybe 10 people in camp, but only 1 or 2 would qualify for permanent supportive housing. What can we do now? Because we all know 2 has turned into 5, has turned into 10, has turned into 20, has turned into 40 tents. It's not good for a neighborhood, and it's certainly not good for the folks who are experiencing homelessness who are there too. So the idea behind this, what is the bridge housing? I'll tell you what it isn't first, and then what it is. Much shelter that we have in this city, unfortunately in the past hasn't worked. An outreach worker might find somebody in the San Fernando Valley, might make some calls, they didn't even have a database for this, and say there's a bed available, it's in South LA. By the way, you can't bring your stuff, you can't bring your pet, you can't bring your partner, there's no services there, there's no storage there, and at 7 o'clock in the morning you're going to get kicked out. No wonder people from the street have not trusted and have not gone towards shelter. So this is a different model of saying this is not a walk-up shelter. It is not a place where people can come and just say, hey, I need to come in here for a meal or a shower. This is a place where outreach workers for a period of a month or 2, as we've just done downtown, I'm going to end with telling you about what our experience has been so far. So this isn't theoretical, it's actual for what we're experiencing. They work and talk to people and say, look, there will be beds available right here in this neighborhood soon. You will have showers, you'll have a meal that's there, you'll have services. While it is not luxury and it's not comfortable, it is something that is respectful and it is temporary. It allows us to be able to have from, the average stay is about 2 to 6 months. So somebody, let's say 4 months, can come through, stabilize, get case managed, and get put into permanent housing or permanent solution. So the idea behind that is either we leave people on the sidewalks, which is unacceptable, I think, for all of us, or find a way to get them off of our sidewalks and to set them towards a path of actually getting out of homelessness. That's the simple theory behind it. The last thing I want to talk about, I don't know if we have it up from downtown. Do we have any slides from the downtown? Let's go to the next slide. So the first one of these is not theoretical. It's real. This was a city property. It's at the birthplace of our city, Alvera Street, El Pueblo, where merchants and folks that live there, because there are residents right there too, we're able to say we are totally encamped. There's churches here. There's a school a block and a half away. There are folks that walk to work. This is the gateway to our city. Hold on, I'm just saying what people told me. It's not a lie. This was their complaint to me. So this was their complaint to me. Can you do something to solve homelessness where we are? And so we looked at this property, which was an imperfect one. It's a triangle. It's on a slope. It had some engineering challenges. It was never contrary to what you said over budget. Somebody on the back of a napkin estimated it would be half the price. But when we got an engineer in there, hold on. And there are other ones that are residential. We'll address that in the questions. This is now open. This is a place where there are 45 beds, 15 of them for women, 30 of them for men and women, so partners can stay together. There's 24/7 services there. There's security there. There are folks, real people who are living in there. Already out of here, and it's only been open for a few weeks, we have about 11 people in here or from the outreach work just around there who have moved on from being there and are in permanent housing. 11 people. I appreciate that. We've got a long, long way to go. I only share that not for, wow, we got 11 people. It's a model that we looked at really hard. I'm not just here as a mayor. I'm here as a father. I'm here as somebody who has a guy for the last year and a half who every 2 or 3 days, maybe sometimes every night, wakes me up at 4 a.m. at his witching hour. Who I've been outside. I've seen the fights on my own street at the end of the block. I don't deny any of the things that you are. That's my reality too. And as somebody who cares tremendously, as a father, about my children, my daughter, when I walk in my neighborhood, which is right there in Koreatown, seeing tents. So when we look at it, when we look, hold on. I promise there will be plenty of time. I promise there will be plenty of time. It's next to her home. Hold on. All right, please, I'd ask you to be respectful. So, when we look at what works, because the easiest thing politically to do is to walk away whenever there's opposition anywhere in the town, and people would say, okay, thank you for walking away. We can't walk away from homes. We can't walk away from trying to figure out in a neighborhood what works. And here at this project so far, there was one man who had been out in the street for 20 years. His kind of buddy on the street was put in hospice care, and he said, I thought it was finally time to come in. He has bone disease that makes him hurt. He said, with tears in his eyes, it was the first time in 20 years his bones didn't work. There was a woman who was deeply mentally ill, who was dealing with probably bipolar disorder, harming herself and others, who through the outreach work leading up to this, is now in permanent supportive housing. I tell these stories because I think we abstract often who, quote-unquote, the homeless are. But Angelino's experiencing homelessness. And by the way, for those of you concerned about crime, your housed or unhoused condition doesn't protect you from not having consequences for committing crime. I want you to hear that, please. I want you to hear it. But at the same time, taking everybody who is experiencing homelessness, for everybody who's experiencing homelessness, also to be dismissed like any group that's ethnic or whatever as a group of people who are all X, Y, or Z, who are all criminal, or who are all addicts, or who are all whatever, as well is something that we cannot engage in if we're going to end homelessness. So I'm here because I'm concerned with what works. And I'll conclude with this, and then you can have at me. I want what works. I want what works. As an Angelino, I want what works. And as a mayor, who's never run for mayor again, who's got 4.5 years thanks to this big super term, who knows? And please, you are welcome to have your opinion, but listen to my sentence, and I'll give you the respect when you speak and you stand up and ask your questions, sir. So I'd ask that as well. Okay, I'm not organized the format. I'm here as a guest, and I will stay here as long as you want me to tonight. I don't have anything else. I got childcare tonight. I'm here. So now listen. What we need to do is what works. And what works, we know, is getting people between the services and the permanent supportive housing to actually have people who start to get them off the street. We begin to case manage them.